Dear Wounded Leader, Episode 3, Strong Enough to Serve, Too Tired to Fail. Now, there's a version of leadership pain that it doesn't cry, it doesn't scream, it doesn't collapse in public. It simply goes numb. Now, this episode is for the leader who's still serving faithfully, but no longer feels deeply. Oh, you preach still, and you still teach, and you still lead meetings. You still make decisions. You still carry responsibility. But somewhere along the way, you stop feeling. Not because you don't care, not because caring became a burden, but it became too expensive. You're strong enough to serve, but too tired to feel. And emotional numbness is one of the most dangerous conditions a leader can enter because it looks like maturity and it feels like survival. See, you told yourself, I can't afford to feel this right now, so you postponed grief. You delayed disappointment. You even buried frustration, and you shelved sadness, and you kept going. But postponed pain, it doesn't disappear. It hardens. Leaders don't shut down emotionally because they're weak. They shut down because they have been strong for too long without relief. You carry crises they were not even yours. You absorb tension that you should have shared. You mediate conflicts that you didn't even create. And you stood in gaps nobody thanked you for. And eventually, your soul said, I can't keep processing this and still function. So you turn the volume down. You didn't become cold, you became overloaded. You didn't lose compassion, you hit emotional capacity. And the tragedy is this. People applauded your consistency while your inner world was quietly starving. Because the numb leaders, they still perform well. Oh yeah, you still sounding on it, you look composed, and you still function at a high level. But inside, joy feels distant. Sorrows feel muted. And passion, well, it feels mechanical. You laugh, but it doesn't quite reach your chest. You pray, but it doesn't quite stir your spirit. You worship, but it doesn't move your soul. You're present, but you're not connected. And leaders rarely talk about this because numbness, it doesn't look like failure. It looks like discipline, it sounds like control, and it looks like professionalism. But numbness is not strength, it's self-protection. Your soul goes into lockdown because it doesn't feel safe anymore. Too many disappointments, betrayals, too many unmet expectations, too many seasons of giving without receiving. And nobody checked on you because you were still producing. But let me say this to you very plainly. Functioning is not the same as being whole. You can be effective and empty. You can be consistent and disconnected. You can be admired and emotionally absent. And numbness will eventually leak into leadership. It shows up as impatience, irritability, detachment. It shows up as a short fuse for things that never used to bother you. You don't snap because people are difficult. You snap because you're exhausted at the soul level. And the most dangerous part of this, numb leaders don't even know they're numb. You just tell yourself this is what leadership requires. You say this is the cost of responsibility. You say things like this is maturity. No, this is unaddressed pain masquerading as endurance. You were not created to lead without feelings. You were designed to lead from wholeness, not hollowness. And here's the truth most leaders never hear. If you don't make room to feel, your soul will eventually force a shutdown. It may come out as burnout, maybe depression. It may come out as moral fatigue. It may come as walking away suddenly from things that you once loved. Not because you stopped caring, but simply because you ran out of emotional reserves. Now, this episode is both a warning and an invitation. A warning that numbness is not sustainable, and an invitation to feel again without falling apart. You don't heal numbness by quitting leadership. You heal numbness by confronting what you refuse to process. You don't need less responsibility. You need emotional honesty. Some of you are still carrying grief you never name. Some are carrying anger you never release. And even still, some are carrying disappointment you spiritualized instead of processed. Oh yeah, and spiritual language became the place where you hid your pain. This is how it sounds. You say things like, I'm trusting God, but you never told him how tired you were. You said, God's got it, but you never admitted that you didn't. Let me help free you today. Feeling does not make you weak. Feeling makes you alive. Tears are not a threat to leadership. There's a signal that your soul is still responsive. And leaders who never feel eventually lead people they can no longer understand. You don't lose authority by healing. You lose authority by leading disconnected from your humanity. Now, this is not about becoming emotional. This is about becoming integrated. Where strength and sensitivity coexist. Where authority and vulnerability align. Where leadership flows from health, not harm. You're not called to bleed out emotionally. You're called to be restored internally. And restoration begins when you stop saying, I'm fine, and start saying, what am I feeling and why? You can lead and feel. You can serve and rest. You can be strong without being numb. But you have to stop pretending that exhaustion is holiness and numbness is maturity. In this season, God is not calling wounded leaders to perform better. He's calling them to heal deeper. Because healed leaders don't just build systems. They build people. And the world doesn't need more emotionally unavailable leadership. It needs leaders who are whole enough to heal again. You're strong enough to serve, but you were never meant to be too tired to feel. And now that this has been exposed, let the healing begin. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with God. You know where you are. You know what's on the inside that others can't see. Heal. Lead. I love you, my dear wounded leader. God bless.